Hello and welcome to our panel discussion on how to plan a successful hybrid teaching model. My name is Frankie and I work at Technological Innovations Group, otherwise known as TIG. TIG recently conducted a survey asking some of the UK's universities if they thought the forced move to online teaching would be sustained beyond the pandemic. The results revealed that no one is predicting a move fully back to the classroom or fully online, with 100% of respondents seeing a mix of virtual and in-person teaching. So it seems that hybrid teaching or hybrid learning are key terms that will drive the development of our teaching spaces in the near future. But whilst everyone knows the future will be hybrid, how many are asking, where do I start? How do we actually prepare for this? What steps should universities be taking in the planning process? So we're here today to provide some practical advice to consider when implementing your hybrid learning model. So without further ado, let me introduce the panel. Joining me today, I'm delighted to welcome Phil Waterhouse, Education Business Development Manager for Crestron UK.
Hi, morning.
Adam Harvey, Solution Architect from the University of Hertfordshire.
Morning.
Dr. Ross Little, Technical Supervisor from the University of Leeds.
Hi.
And Simon Ferguson, Sales Director from Top-Tec.
Hi there, good morning. Hi.
So thank you to all of you for being on our panel today. I'm going to dive right in and ask our first question, which is, what does a hybrid future look like and how can we actually prepare for this? What advice would you give? I'll pass that over to Phil to start with.
Thank you. I think if we look at hybrid today, where we're at, and I'm sure Adam and Ross can give me a little bit more on this, it's somewhere between a PC in a room with a webcam. So that's where we were March. Let's do it quickly if we needed to, right up to a full Zoom or Teams system in a room. And certainly speaking with people in the last few weeks, that's where the university spaces are now. I think the practical advice would be more look at the expectations of the university in terms of students on and off campus. So some are saying now that it's around 50-50, with 50% of students coming in, 50% being in either at home or in student accommodation. But by Easter next year, so 2022, around about 80% in class and 20% will be online. So there'll still be that hybrid working, I would say forever, listening to conversations we're having. But some hybrid spaces are being discussed about having everybody in and on campus, but separating them socially distanced throughout the university, so in different teaching spaces. And I think it depends more on what type of degree. So a graphic design degree, for instance, it's easier to deliver that online, whereas a science degree, with the practical lessons that are needed, you have to go into class. I don't know what anybody else takes on that.
So I think the word hybrid it's going to mean a different thing for everybody. And like you said, it's going to be a different thing, within an institution, depending on the program you're delivering. So absolutely, specialist facilities, they're going to need to be primarily campus based, where other stuff can be primarily online. I think, what we're trying to develop is a blended and flexible learning approach to all of the programs the university deliver. So that's the thing. I think at the moment, we jumped in last March and it was, let's just get everybody online because we all had to leave. And then that's developed over the year to, what can we do? But yeah, I think from a University of Hertfordshire approach, we're looking long term at that now and to see what that means. So we've gone out to a large consultation project with all of our staff and students just to see how we build that.
I was going to ask the next question, actually, Adam, was if you were to look at what other universities are doing, I wonder if you could shed some more light on what Hertfordshire is planning.
Okay, so I think, like everybody else, we jumped into a, primarily Teams-based teaching and, using Panopto lecture capture tools that we had that was from March. So, it was kind of our team's licenses went from about 250 to 35,000 in 7 days. It's probably a common story across the sector. Everybody had to jump. I've got utmost respect for our academic and teaching staff who, had to completely change the way they deliver all of the content for every program in the university in a week. So, I think across the entire higher education sector and further, everyone's done an amazing job over the last year. So how do you build on that? We've got a lot of good feedback from our students saying, actually, the online works for them, and they wouldn't want to see it drop completely. So our Vice Chancellor set quite a challenging target to convert all of the programs in the university to a flexible and learning approach by 2025. So that means we have to look at every single program we deliver and work out the best way to make that blended and flexible. So in some cases, that will be technology in teaching rooms and other spaces in the university to allow students in room and online to, see and hear and have the same experience as much as possible. In some cases, like we said, with specialist facilities, we're going to have to work out how to do that primarily by on-campus teaching. UH, I guess, like Leeds as well, is we're a campus-based university, and that university life is really, really important to students. Yeah. So we need to retain that, but we obviously need to, going forward, delivering online as part of the program is really, really important, and it gives students a lot more flexibility in how they learn.
Ross, I wondered if you could shed some light on what Leeds is doing.
Yeah, so Leeds, so similar to what Adam was saying, with his experience over the last year. So we initially jumped into hybrid, offering sort of DIY solutions, so webcams, etc. Anything that we could do to assist with that. We have lecture capture across the entire campus, so the number of sessions being recorded was sort of through the roof. They can record in their office, they can record at home as well as part of that process. Teams is our primary platform because we have a Microsoft site license. So everyone began to use Teams and lecture capture to deliver everything online. So since then, we've been looking at hybrid. We sort of been using the terms multi-mode and hybrid interchangeably as part of that process. And I guess for us, hybrid is a mixture between live streaming of the content at the lectern, probably mostly the PC more than anything else, all the way up to full interaction. So having microphones above the audience, having that two-way interaction, in-room students being able to see remote students on a dedicated display, and then the remote students being able to see the in-room students as well. So basically a camera pointing towards the students, all feeding into Teams, Zoom, etc. So right now, Leeds, we're going through a trial period. So we've got a pilot scheme going to launch very soon of 14 or 15 rooms across campus. That was basically, we've gone out to academics on campus and other, external institutions to gather thoughts, opinions about what they actually wanted to do with that. And so through that process, we've managed to identify these 15 rooms, and we're now going to put some hybrid technology across all those rooms as a pilot starting this September. And then based upon the feedback from academics in September, we'll then hopefully begin to roll it out further across campus. I mean, essentially the feedback from academics was, we want it everywhere because we don't like having to book spaces that are dedicated to specific tasks. So, but again, the sort of feeling is for us that a hybrid is the way to go. It is going to be an important part of how the university delivers its programs. And similar to Adam, our Vice Chancellor has set a 2025 goal for delivering of all programs online or partially online. So yeah, so quite similar, to be honest.
Yeah, that's interesting. I just wondered kind of more generally, Do we see investment in larger hybrid learning spaces or a distinction between separate in-person and online only spaces? And how much space is being dedicated to online only? So if I can ping that to Simon first.
Yeah, I think we've definitely seen a mixture. Early on in the lockdown sessions that we've had, we saw obviously a knee-jerk reaction to the situation, and we heard about all sorts of areas being taken over, even down to staff offices being taken over as teaching spaces. And as a manufacturer, we moved fairly quickly to try and come up with some solutions. And it is all solutions driven, what we're doing. So the likes of Adam and Ross perhaps come up with some ideas of how they want to implement blended hybrid learning. And then it's down to us guys to really try and come up with solutions to make that integration as seamless as it can be. So yeah, we've seen a lot of changes over the last 12 months and had to move, fairly dynamically to make sure that the solutions are there to integrate the equipment.
Just from my point, I'm speaking to a few universities. Some of the business schools are now actually looking at online only dedicated spaces using Teams and Zoom, because you can get up to 50 people on one screen. You've then got a teaching space is being put online with a lecturer going into that space, and actually at any time. It doesn't now need to be 9 a.m. UK time through till 4 o'clock UK time. It can be midnight, whenever. So the students that are coming outside of the UK, whether that be from Southeast Asia, America, doesn't matter, they can be taught online in those dedicated spaces. So there's no students on seats. So the smaller space, like Simon said, it could have been an old office space, but it's being created as a dedicated online teaching space. And that's a good conversation that's happening now with quite a few universities, predominantly the business schools.
And
yeah, and Leeds Business School is a good example for us, where they've actually created a studio and a totally separate piece of equipment that we've worked with them on, which I won't go into now. But yeah, that's a real move away from traditional learning, isn't it? To be able to set up in a studio and record, a very professional video output. So yeah, big changes.
I think we're going to have a mix of spaces, and we're certainly going to have our traditional teaching spaces and adapt those. But I think you're right. Some studio spaces to create different content will certainly be required. So we've had some schools mentioning things like light boxes and light boards rather, and we do need to have spaces that we can create that specialist content. But we are, like I said before, we're a campus-based university, so effectively we want the students to be in the university, just make it safe for them to be there, but with the option of joining remotely. So we need to look at all of our spaces in great detail, really, about how we do that. I think the other couple of things we've had is feedback from staff and students. So the students overwhelmingly encourage live. They don't, having on-demand video is great, it's great as a revision aid anyway, for whatever other reasons, but, having that live interaction with the lecturer is really, really key. And from our academic staff, seeing clearly the remote participants is also key, so you can engage with them. So we're doing a lecture theatre at the moment, and we've, around the front row of seating, we've put a load of displays, so we can start to get those student participants really right in front of the lecturer, like all the in-room participants. So I think, that engagement and the collaboration between in-person and online has to be really, really key to this puzzle, I think.
We've seen it on television, haven't we? Exactly that, where you've got a remote audience and all screen based.
Well, I think that we've even like the meetings, we're starting to get a lot of feedback about Teams meetings on a single display like we're doing now is all very well, but where we're starting to do more hybrid meeting rooms, I think we're getting a little bit more feedback about, I think I can't remember what the old products used to be, portrait screens with one person on an individual screen sat around the room, so it feels like everybody's there. We're sort of going back a few years into how it used to be sort of presented, but that's becoming more and more important now, because the remote participants also need to feel that they've got a proper presence within that meeting, not just a quarter of a screen in the room. It does make a massive difference, I think,
and can have an input as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really interesting. My final question for this session is the golden nugget, so no biggie. 92% of our survey respondents stated that their university was allocating budget for new equipment or infrastructure to facilitate hybrid learning. But where should universities be prioritising their investments now in order to remain future-proof? Don't know who would like to answer that first.
If we've got to remain agnostic.
Well, I think the key thing for us would probably be infrastructure. We've done a lot of projects using AV over IP technologies, and it's given us a massive amount of flexibility to change stuff. So I think in all our new buildings, that is the key for us. That's our starting point, just to make sure our data infrastructure is where it needs to be and big enough and robust enough to be able to handle all this. After that, this hybrid, blended, flexible learning will change, absolutely, as people start and then go down that journey to, in 5 years' time, like me and Ross have got to do. 2025 is a target that we've got to get everything blended and flexible across the entire university program. So that's a big challenge, and it won't be right the first time we do it. Absolutely. So infrastructure is the big thing. There is simple things like, can everybody be seen and heard and participate? So, they're the kind of the four big things really for me.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right with the scalability. That's the crucial word for me. Is we can do it in 5 or 6 dedicated rooms, but they're soon going to be booked up and used. Can we then scale that up to 200 rooms, 300 rooms? If it really does get to that stage, how easy is it to implement and roll out across the university and put dedicated spaces in that are flexible for that hybrid teaching? So I think scalability is crucial.
Yeah, so I agree. I'm going to essentially just going to echo what Adam and Phil have already said, but yeah, adding full hybrid with this, with the interaction and the screens that show remote students, everything is very, very expensive, and we're going through this, pilot scheme just now to add these to rooms, but the bill is quite large to add, just to even add it into the rooms alone. So yeah, I think in terms of scalability, having that data infrastructure is definitely key. Also, again, from feedback that we've received from academics and externals, things like audio quality is also really important in a lot of cases. It helps to bring the remote students into the room almost, but yeah, for us, certainly it's early days, so I'm not quite sure how it will actually look for us long term, and how we'd actually scale this across the entire campus. We have quite a large campus, and we have, we've got a lot of aging infrastructure, and so in that sense, it's going to be quite challenging for us. We have not only the infrastructure to pay for, but also the technology in the rooms. So yes, difficult to answer that question for Leeds just now.
Well, I think you're right with the infrastructure that you've got in place now worked in February 2020. And now what do we do 12, 14 months further on? Do we just add something to that current infrastructure to make it work now? Or is that just a plaster? And do we need to look at the whole rollout of changing all technology in rooms? So I think there's a case for, well, we can just add something to it to make it online. We had a Zoom or a Teams presence in that room. it will still work as an in-class teaching space, but then adding students in from online. And anywhere new, any new builds, yeah, that's where I think the investment will be first, to create those dedicated, flexible spaces that are hybrid, and they are the future-proofing spaces.
Yeah,
it's a real large project. I mean, for University of Hertfordshire, I mean, we've got over 500 teaching spaces, so we can't do all that in one hit. I mean, like you say, even the sticking plaster, you know, just adding a few things to make them hybrid, that's a massive bill. So, you know, we need to, you know, we've got 5 years. First of all, once the reports back about exactly what the pedagogy of that blended and flexible is, we'll apply the technology piece to it. And then it's a 5-year program. We'll change our standards and install from that point. But even in 5 years, we're not going to hit all them rooms as a normal refresh program. So we are going to need some funding to change everything else. So it's a real big piece of work, that is, about how we do it. And yeah, it's probably going to have quite a large number attached to it, I think. But so we just need to work out how we can do that to the best of our ability for the right budget, value for money, and all those sort of things. So it's going to be really interesting. Looking forward to it, sort of.
Just picking up on that cost issue, we're having quite a lot of conversations about the old adage of flexibility, and that means different things again to different people. But we're having conversations particularly about shared resources. So a piece of equipment may be quite an expensive exercise to get it all up and running, but if that's got some mobility about it and can be moved from room to room, we're working pretty hard on trying to come up with those sort of solutions. And then the other aspect to that is the actual classroom itself, seminar room, whatever, having the furniture within there also with this flexible element to it, being able to move the classroom around for different subjects, different dynamics within the room, whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've had quite a lot of conversations on that line at flexibility.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, one of the outcomes of this consultation project we're doing could be that every teaching space doesn't need to be blended learning enabled. Yeah. It's so, you know, we're kind of in a process at the moment. We're just sort of into a workshop thing to sort of like go with the emerging principles to everybody and see how it fits with them, and then once it reports back, then we can start applying it to all the spaces or not. You know, a bit of a waiting game at the moment. But.
Yeah, you know, same here actually, and I think so. We are trying it in different types of rooms. So, you know, it's ordinary seminar rooms and collaboration rooms. You know, up to large lecture theatres as well. And it might be that the technology or the principles don't really work very well in certain room types. You know, so it's very challenging technologically to provide hybrid in a lecture theatre, depending upon the space, obviously, you know, to provide that audio above the audience, and, you know, given that things like catch boxes and roving mics are not the preferred option anymore, you know, due to health and safety, it can be extremely expensive in some rooms. Some of our rooms are already flexible hybrid rooms. You know, they've got pods, student pods around the rooms. And actually adding the technology to provide for hybrid learning in those spaces is comparatively quite cheap. So it might be that, yeah, you know, similar to what Adam was saying, it might be after we go through this whole process that only certain types of rooms will have hybrid, and some just won't because of there's no desire to, or it's possibly you know, too expensive to provide that at scale.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure that's provided some really useful insight for our listeners. And that brings us to the end of our discussion. So thank you to everyone who tuned in. Should you wish to hear any more from any of our panelists, please do drop us a line in the comments and we'll be happy to get back to you. Good luck with your hybrid teaching and take care.